Here today to give the update for the sea lamprey status for 2008-2013. We have one fish community objective, 3.4. Pretty simple, control sea lamprey. We have two indicators, the spawning phase adult sea lamprey abundance in Ontario tributaries below targets, and as Brian pointed out, a number of A1 wounds on lake trout to be below targets. So we go to the suppression targets, and the primary metric to judge the success of our program, the sea lamprey control program, is the annual estimation of sea lamprey abundance. Those levels have been set at 31,000 plus or minus 4,000. And as Brian pointed out in his talk on the lake trout, we're looking at less than 2 wounds per 100 fish on larger lake trout. So this is the time series of the data for the sea lamprey abundance. Through the mid-90s to the mid-2000s, we were bouncing around the target, a little bit, mostly below, a little bit above. Then we hit that bad period that Brian referred to. Later on in this time series, now we're getting back into the target level. And in fact, in 2013, we were at 29,000, which is just below the target of 31,000. Just a little bit more detail here. I've broken this up into the two periods of the state of the lake. So the 2008 to the 2013, we're at about 41,000 on average. Prior to that, in the period that Brian indicated with a little bit of collapse, we actually were averaging about 48,500. So not meeting our objective or our indicator, but it is stable. There's no trend here. But there is a little good news. We are coming down a bit compared to the last period. Won't beat this to death too much. This is the lake trout wounding rate. As Brian pointed out, bounces around the target. This year specifically, it was 2.2 wounds, just over the target. But the good news is, in the 2008 to 2013 period, we're averaging about 1.6. So we're meeting our indicator. And as he pointed out, there's no trend. And also, it shows that we had double that wounding rate in the previous period. So we're a little optimistic at the sea lamprey control program. So what I thought I'd do for the rest of the talk is go through some of the actions that we did in that period of 2008 to 2013 that maybe got us to that little better place. So I'll just go through these quickly. Obviously, treatment effort, amount of lampricide we use. We developed some options for enhanced treatment strategies. There's been a couple of little changes to larval assessment and with the barriers and trapping program, and then finally the sea lamprey management plan that was developed. As you can see here, splitting up the two periods, 2008-13 and then the previous period, basically it's about the same effort, and there's not a lot of producing streams relative to the other lakes in Lake Ontario, so we pretty much hit all of them. So that effort wouldn't be expected to change too much. Looking at annual lampricide use, again, not much different. And this can be very, it depends on the sweetest streams that are scheduled in 1 year. You could treat a couple high discharge streams and really put that chemical up. But overall, we're putting about the same amount of effort and same amount of TFM. Some of the changes that, and the agents developed this in 2006, and it's treatment enhancement strategies. These are options, and we took a look at treatments that we were doing and how could we do things better to get to targets. So one of the options is increase target concentrations to minimum lethal concentration, plus a buffer of 10%. And what we're looking for here, we base our target concentrations on predictive charts that are set up on bioassays to determine minimum lethal concentrations. But that's the absolute minimum. So we want to create a buffer. We want to be above that to make sure there's some variability within larval response right at the minimum lethal. So we want to be above that. It does cost a little bit more in chemical, but the results are, to get more lamprey killed here. One of the second options is increase the duration of lampricide applications by about 1 to 4 hours. We're targeting 9 hours of minimum lethal. In certain situations, especially low flow situation, the chemical bank or block attenuates, and so we actually have to put it in longer to get that 9 hours. And this also becomes important in the fall. We find that we definitely have to get 9 hours and maybe beyond. Those larvae in the streams are fat and happy. They've been feeding all year. So we actually target maybe 10 to 12 hours of minimum lethal to make sure that we're getting those larvae later in the year. One of the third options is secondary applications, and this is application to lampricide to potential escapement areas, and as this picture depicts, little backwater areas that the chemical doesn't penetrate from the main block. So we have personnel actually going down the stream while the chemical's going through, spraying these little backwater areas, rivulets, and those are areas of refuge for larval sea lamprey that, and then they would survive treatment and become residuals. One of the last options is basically treating the best time of year that we can. And for Lake Ontario, that's the spring, especially the south shore of Lake Ontario in New York. A lot of those streams have numerous beaver impoundments. Best to treat those at high flows to get effective chemical blocks through those ponds. And the other reason as well, as I talked about earlier in the fall, that those amicetes have a better condition factor. They've been fat and happy. These guys are skinny and mad. They have eaten less or nothing or next to nothing all winter long. So chemical really affects them, and we can actually go below minimum lethal in certain situations and get an effective kill. Couple little nuances to larval assessment. In recent years, and probably during this period, we've increased surveys to detect new populations. These are streams that have potential spawning, have habitat that would be suitable for sea lamprey, but have never produced before. So we actually increased the amount of these surveys to these streams, and in this period of 2008 to 2013, only one new stream was found. The population density is quite low. It won't rank for treatment, but we'll certainly be keeping an eye on it. The second is post-treatment evaluations. Now, we've always done some sort of evaluation after to find out how effective we were. But in recent years, the push is to do these post-treatment evaluations in the year of treatment. And that's very important for Lake Ontario because we prefer to treat all these streams in the spring. If larval assessment comes in during the summer and actually finds out that we weren't as effective as we thought, this stream may need to be treated again, and we could still do it in the same year. At any rate, at doing these post-treatment evaluations, we've actually, if there's enough animals in there to make a cost-effective treatment, we'll actually treat ahead of schedule. Most streams in Lake Ontario on a 3-year schedule, and I've mentioned here 4 accelerated treatments, and they're actually treated in a 2-year cycle because of the residual population. The last one is barrier effectiveness surveys, and these are surveys above barriers that have been a blockage for sea lamprey to get up at this point. And I think the protocol, and I'll ask Fraser, I think it's about every 10 years that we were supposed to be looking at this type of surveys. He's actually adopted to within a treatment cycle, so every 3 years he's visiting a lot of these barriers and doing surveys above, so basically we don't get caught with our pants down and have a source of lamprey above there. Moving on to barriers and trapping, for most of the period of 2008 to 2013, we had 15 barriers, and 9 of them were purpose-built and 6 were modified to block lamprey. After lots of fits and starts, we finally got the Orwell Brook Barrier, which is tributary to the Salmon River in New York, and it was built in 2012, so now we have around the basin 16 barriers. This is very important to the treatment program. Orwell Brook is one of those streams I mentioned with numerous beaver dams and a hard time getting effective treatments and always had residuals. So for the last 6 or 7 years, this has been on an annual treatment schedule to make sure we get those residual lamprey in there and have those populations not get too high. Having this dam and in place, and in 2013, the larval survey information, again above the barrier, indicated residuals from the 2012 treatment, or 13 treatment, sorry, but also indicated no recruitment. So that's, at this point, it's working, and if it does work, and we're certainly confident it will, that allows to put effort that was taking every year to treat this stream and treat others. Onto the trapping, again for the period of 2008 to 2013, we had around the basin 11 sites on 10 different tributaries. With the construction of the Orwell Creek, it has an integrated trap in it, and so now we have 12 sites around the basin. Interesting enough, it captured 435 spawning phase sea lamprey in its first year of operation. And to put it in perspective, there are 5 other barriers in the New York side of Lake Ontario, and this was by far the highest catch. And lastly, in the mid-2000s, I'm guessing, started work on a sea lamprey management plan. They're lake-specific. Basically, it's the best management practices to get us to targets. They have tactics in there that are both lake-wide and for locality-specific. And if anyone is interested, you may know about these, but they're located on the GLFC website. And that's all I have, and I'll take questions if everyone agrees that a good lamprey is a